For plebs, by plebs, dropping the Bitcoin only signal. Pleb Underground. Welcome everyone to the Pleb Underground.
Pleb Underground episode 28. Don't make good the enemy of great, but excellence should be your aim. Be an individual, not just the same. In the fiat world, there's a fight to be elite. If you love nostr so much, then why do you tweet? You claim to be unruggable while the carpet burns. Gotta get stronger, real life challenges don't take turns. Don't be clamoring for that mention. Don't be a wide open book. Provide force proportional to extension. How's that for a hook? Prices going up, not what they were in my day. Food costing more, fuck fiat, thank God it's Friday. I'm a Bitcoin maxi, not following what's au fait. Don't follow trends, set them. Do as you do, not as you say. Lightning node, stay sovereign on L2, avoid custodial abuse, hashtag me too. Build the confidence, don't be a wussy. It doesn't take a genius to run an embassy. Each rip recorded first time, no practice. We're hodling the corn harder than the water in a cactus. Without corporate cuck sponsorship, we're the most real spitters, not just spouting regurgitated milk toast twitters.
Walton, that was an absolutely awesome rhyme. I definitely think that has been your best work so far. That's right, everyone. Welcome back. We are the Pleb Underground, and joining us today, friend of the show. I have known Matt for a while. He has known me for a while. He is the founder of Start9 Labs. Matt, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Sweet. All right. Well, without further ado, we are diving into the numbers.
Yeah, the numbers, of course, brought to us by Timechain Stats. Please check out Timechain Calendar for an excellent way to browse the Timechain. The other day, I used it to know when was that palindromic block number going to come up. When was 777777 going to come up? And it was the best way of keeping track of when that would be approximately. Check them out. Timechain Calendar and Timechain Stats. Phil, what do the numbers look like this week?
At the time of this recording, the block height is 778,150. The Bitcoin price, 23,190. Total public Lightning capacity, 5,411. Moscow time, 4313. And the chain rewrite days, 739. All right. I was sleeping during block height 777,777. Matt, what were you doing?
Snowboarding.
Nice. Matt was doing the right thing. Walton, what about you, man?
I think it was like late morning or something. So I think I went on Twitter and realized it was the block just before, and yeah, so put out some tweet actually asking the question again of when does the fiat exchange rate exceed the block height. I ran a poll about a year ago or something, and a whole bunch of people thought it would happen between 700,000 and 800,000. I think that's highly unlikely, especially now. But there were a lot of people saying, still the majority of people thought it would happen before 1 million. Let's have a little think about that just for a moment. So 1 million is about 220,000 blocks away, right? That's about 2 years. Yeah, good luck. Good luck. I don't think that's going to happen for dollars, pounds, euros. Maybe for some serious shitcoin cuckbuck, but that's not happening for those ones in the near future like that.
I feel like that's bearish. I feel like you're being bearish.
Bearish? You think you're going to go to $1 million in 2 years?
Think about it, right? We're supposed to be perpetual bulls, man. What are you talking about?
I would consider it quite bearish if we hit $1 million in 2 years, because it means all of society is collapsing.
There you go.
I don't want it to hit 1 million in 2 years. That's too fast.
Don't.
We need more time to offboard people before the dollar collapses.
Oh gosh. All right. Well, here let's.
But then you can start employing them at a faster rate, right? Like you can just build Start9 Empire. I don't know.
On the ashes, maybe, sure. Yeah, I genuinely do want society to hold on for a little longer while we build parallel systems.
But I do think the transition happens as Bitcoiners acquire more and more fiat businesses. Obviously, the ones that are actually delivering real value in the real world and acquiring money as a consequence, or debt in the fiat world, right? But it'll be those ones that that do deliver true value that get sucked up by Bitcoiners, because the only true diversification other than Bitcoin is having a producing positive cash flow business.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. But I know that
which is why some people try and get into mining, because you could argue that that's kind of they're trying to do that essentially. But anyway,
What
about other hard assets like land?
Exactly. I mean, look, I personally, I don't think that home ownership is a shit coin. I know that that's horrible, and people are like, oh my god, that's terrible. How can you not think so?
I think that's a
your primary
something that you want, not something that like you're looking to kind of. I mean, I guess you can get a return on it, but if you're thinking about you're basically having a land such that then you can have business on it, well, then you're actually looking at the business as the kind of. I don't know. There's different ways of looking at it.
I wasn't necessarily talking about return, just sort of like, what is the purpose of acquiring wealth? And I think part of that purpose is
absolutely,
acquiring land and providing.
That's the goal, right? That's the long-term goal.
Yeah.
I think it also speaks to the point of being self-sufficient, right? I think you might also be getting to that point. I think that might also be what you mean as well, right? With land ownership, because it does entail, depending on the type of land that you choose to own, it may entail that.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
right.
To be clear, in most places in the world today, even land ownership has an asterisk next to it, because ultimately you're still paying property taxes and you're still
Always
subject to eminent domain and all the rest. So, ultimately it's not really your land, but there's this like 90% delusion that it is. And that just sort of is what it is. It would require a major restructuring of, society and government to make real private land ownership a reality.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I definitely don't think we're there yet.
The problem is that so many services are intertwined with it. Like, how do you have like private sewage services per household? Like, like some of these things, it's just they are so intertwined that it is difficult to separate some of them. You do need some collaboration, but yes, the state shouldn't be like it should all be local cooperation. These sorts of things we shouldn't have. Much like they should be. We should. I hope we go back to a kind of extra Renaissance city-state kind of jurisdictional arbitrage, fun times, to be honest, when lots of creativity happened.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between sort of bottom-up, voluntary collaboration versus a top-down regulation and enforcement. I'm all for cooperative human endeavors. I'm even for the organic grassroots formation of organizations, and you can even call them governments. But they need to be built voluntarily, between a few individuals choosing to engage in an endeavor together, and then those groups potentially combining with other groups to do something on a bigger scale. But it's the voluntary bottom-up nature of that makes it acceptable and moral. And you can argue that maybe even that process ultimately results in a giant organization that then imposes its will on everyone else. But I would argue that in a hard money standard, under a Bitcoin standard, and with some newer advanced technology, defensive technology, that wouldn't happen, right? That in the past, that process happened simply because we were at a different era of human history, and we didn't have the technology to implement defensive, tools to counteract the progression towards centralization. And now we do.
Yeah, no, I think you make an excellent point, and it actually what I was thinking of while you were explaining that was essentially even the organizations will say, right? Like let's say there's certain organizations that rise up in those types of conditions and for whatever reason are at the root malicious or something like that. Their power can only be or their ability to exert that power is limited by the fact that they can't actually print money, as opposed to what we have right now with the government. The government can enforce violence and it prints money. So it has this ability to fund itself perpetually, whether we agree with what that body is doing or not, as opposed to on a Bitcoin standard. I don't believe that it would be able to fund itself perpetually, because it's not able to perpetually create money, you know? So
No,
it would have to offer some type of value.
Or take it by force.
Or take it by force.
In which case people would resist. And, you know, the reason the government gets away with it today is because it's indirect, right? It's not readily perceivable that they are in fact stealing wealth. You know, because it's not, the tax man doesn't show up at your door and just take your money, right? They just dilute it, you know, by printing more of it, and it's enough to go over most people's heads and to be acceptable.
Absolutely.
Well, the tax man also like takes his cut, as well as like you get done on the on debasement as well as tax. And what's even worse is that, of course, as the debasement happens, you rise into greater tax brackets. And of course, then if you try and, you know, maintain your level of purchasing power by having to take on more risk and put your money in the markets, you then get tax gains on that. Yeah, it's all a scam, isn't it? And you have a choice. Like, I don't understand. Like, at what point it's like you just get born and then it's, oh, now you have to pay taxes. Why?
It's just the way it is. It's just that's what it is, man. It's just the way. Like,
and everyone else feels guilted. Like, I think it's what it is. It's everyone's conditioned into it. They're like, well, I have to do it, so you have to do it, and it's all just like it's like the worst system of peer pressure. Tax.
All right.
Well, most people don't voluntarily pay taxes, right? If the government had to collect taxes on an individual by individual basis, it wouldn't work, right? If someone showed up at your door every year and put a gun to your head and said, pay up, there'd be a revolution overnight, right? Taxes work because the businesses have been deputized as tax collectors, and it just gets automatically and magically taken out of your paycheck. And there's really nothing you can do about it. And there's nothing that the businesses can do about it either, because if they don't comply, then they get shut down. And so anyone who wants to start a business just sort of has to do this. So what it would require is not mass non-compliance from the general population to, you know, fight back against this theft. It would require mass non-compliance from businesses, and you're never going to get that. You would never get mass non-compliance from individuals either, but you're even less likely to get it from businesses.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and again, right, this all goes back to incentives. Businesses in no way, shape, or form are really incentivized not to do this.
No, because they're not being charged the tax. It's being passed through to the employees. So the business is just sort of like, well, sorry, you're fucked, but there's nothing I can do about it.
But I want to grow my business, so I'm going to do it. You know, like that's, look, at the end of the day, this is, it's kind of that giant, you know, that giant administrative kind of red tape circle jerk. And that's kind of why, interestingly enough, right, it's like small business ownership in some way is discouraged, because they don't necessarily want you off the wheel. So you'd be better off as an employee in a giant corporation. But if you get big enough, they definitely want you, like you said, they want you to be a deputy for them, right? The government wants to make sure that you're going to help enforce all of those tax laws and make sure that you're collecting it all at the base of the salary. So it's a very, I find it's like it's an interesting dynamic that we have. Doesn't work out for us, but anyways, okay, let's take a look at something a little bit more bullish here. Let's take a look at this here. We've got, check this out. This is for the numbers.
Look, bam!
That's right, of course, man. We got to give, man, you know, it's fellow plebs. They put out some great tweets. Take a look. Bam, what did he say, Bam the Mexican? Yet another all-time high. A total of 66.96% from the entire Bitcoin supply has not moved in over a year. Bitcoin endured. Bitcoin at 69K, a slow depreciation to 15.5K, a comeback to over 24K. Every 0.01% is an extra, give or take, 1,900 BTC hodled for over a year. And I gotta say, that's some good zooming out. And especially when we have one of those weeks like we had this week where, let's be honest, today the Bitcoin price just kind of shat the bed slightly. It's nice to zoom out and see that type of signal. So there are, you got to give a bit of a golf clap, maybe a pat on the shoulder to all the hodlers that are actually doing what we say we're doing and hodling.
Yeah, I agree. We didn't experience, at least in my observation, in my circles, any flinching, let alone despair, during the drop from 60 odd to 15. It just seems like everyone was just like, yep. And it wasn't like that the previous time. I feel like each time this happens, there's more immunity built in. I'm sure that wasn't the case for a lot of the 2020 noobs, right? And
in fairness,
their first.
SBF kind of stole that bull market, right? Like if you think about the fake Bitcoin that gets sold, then the bull market doesn't spike the way it does. So for those of you that are unhappy, you can blame that bank man.
Yeah, we blame SBF and his fake Bitcoin pump. We definitely blame SBF and his fake Bitcoin pump.
Yeah, it probably would have been a lot more controlled and sustainable had there not been this giant Ponzi pumping the price.
And you know
No,
what?
I'm saying it wasn't pumping the price. I'm saying it had the opposite effect. If they're selling fake Bitcoin, they're not having to acquire it, in which case they're not actually pushing the markets upwards from who they're supplying from. So I'm saying you don't get the spike that it would happen, and so it goes to say 69k when it would have gone to 130k or whatever it may be. Do you see what I mean?
Interesting take. Yeah, I got to think about that.
I know that I've heard that one before too, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, it's plausible. It's plausible that he kind of just totally threw a wrench into that freaking bull market. I've seen.
Yeah, and then of course what they were doing is they were lending it to all of the degens, and all like, I mean, Jesus Christ, like the shitcoiners are all just like inbred. Like they just pass around all their fake money and insider trade. Like it's disgusting. Like it's.
Totally agreed. Okay, so look, before we move on to REKT, I just want to point out there's some more signal going on over here. For anybody who's paying attention to nostr, right? Nostr is the.
I thought that was PlebUnderground subscribers there. I thought that was the PlebUnderground subscriber numbers there, Phil.
No, not yet. It's not yet. These are the nostr numbers, okay? And these are the number of pub keys, and you can see obviously it's a pretty nice hockey stick chart. And if we take a look at the number of profiles, right? Look at that. Nice big jump in profiles. So for the people who, who don't necessarily believe in network effects or how quickly they can take shape, we're getting to watch nostr from the very beginning. Kind of like the same way that we got to watch Bitcoin from the very beginning. And this is pretty interesting. Now, I have heard the comparisons back and forth, between nostr and Bitcoin. And of course, obviously it's an open protocol and everything like that. And I get it. But I think for nostr, it's going to be a little bit, I think it's going to be a little bit different. I don't necessarily think that it's going to take on the same trajectory as Bitcoin, but believe it or not, maybe it'll surprise us. Anyways, Matt, what are your thoughts? You on nostr yet? I feel like you are.
I am. Start9 is. We have a relay available on our on the embassy device. I have some thoughts about nostr. So I think, I was originally not impressed by the protocol because it was so simple. Right, like it came across my desk and I was just like, the fuck is innovative about this, and then I thought about it a little more and I looked into it a little more and I was like, oh, okay, that's its strength. That is absolutely its strength, right? This is a different approach to social networking than has ever been tried, right? You have the model that everyone is used to, which is giant centralized server. Everyone's connecting to it. It is responsible for authentication, censorship, enforcement of its own, policies, and all the dangers that come along with all of this, right? Counterparty risk to the data itself, cost, censorship, invasion of privacy, and all the rest. And so as a countermeasure to this, there were some things that have been tried over the years, the most prominent of which is Mastodon. And Mastodon takes a federation approach to social media, where anyone can spin up a server, right? Anyone can spin up their own kind of Twitter, and then whoever wants to can create an account on their server and post and read. And then these servers connect to each other and try to stay in sync with each other. And that's called federation. And it is a very valid model of, networking in computer networking. And it works fairly well, as in Mastodon ultimately does arrive at a global news feed that you can add to and read from in a way that is far more censorship resistant and far less vulnerable to the issues I mentioned originally. However, it has its own challenges. Federation is technically very difficult to do. If you are on a server and that server starts censoring you, your only recourse is to then create an account on a different server. And so you essentially lose your old identity. So it doesn't solve the problem. It just sort of pushes them, a little further outward and lowers their probability. Nostr is completely innovative in that the servers, the relays in this case, do not talk to each other. It's a massive innovation, in my opinion, in social networking technology, because it mirrors how humans built social networks prior to the internet, prior to the digital age, right? Is that you and I would know each other, right? And then you would introduce me to somebody else, and then I could start a letter correspondence with them. And so it's this very grassroots, bottom-up way of clients, in this case, individuals, finding other individuals to follow and communicate with. Mm-hmm. And there is no town hall, right? There is no town hall in Nostr. There's no place where all the posts are being aggregated. It is my job as the individual to collect information from as many different places as possible and then make sense of it, right? To deduplicate the same message. If I get this message from source A and the same message from source B, I'm like, okay, well, those are the same message and I can prove that cryptographically. So let's just delete one and not worry about it, right? And now say like, I want to post. Well, rather than posting to a single server that I am then relying upon to disseminate my message to other servers, I actually post to 100 servers simultaneously. I write the same letter 100 times and hand it to 100 different people. And anyone who's listening to any of those 100 people now gets my message, right? It gets relayed to them. And so that, I'm probably explaining something that the two of you understand, but maybe not everyone who's listening to this show, is a radical innovation in social networking technology on the internet. Because what it allows you to do is form a completely centralized private social network, if I want to, for me and my family and my extended family. I could run a relay that nobody else in the world is aware of and tell all of my family members to connect to that relay and only that relay. And then I would essentially be acting as Twitter or Mastodon server for just that group of people, right? It also then allows for a federated model of sorts where I can pick and choose like a few different relays to connect to. And, relay A is aggregating information from 10 people. Relay B is aggregating information from 20 people, 10 of whom happen to be the same 10 from relay A. And relay C is aggregating information from 15 people who aren't on relays A or B, and I get them all. And that's more of a federated, at least pseudo-federated model. Lastly, it can be completely distributed peer-to-peer, where every single person on Earth is running their own relay. And in order to hear anything from anyone, I need to subscribe to all of their relays. So my Nostr client could actually be subscribed to 10,000 different relays, each of which is giving me information from a single individual. Neither of these there's going to be a lot of this mix and matching as the Nostr network evolves. Some people are going to want a private network. Some people are going to want like a federated approach, which is kind of what Bitcoin Nostr is right now. And then other people will never be fully distributed. but the possibilities are there. And so this is a totally unique way of thinking about networking because it's simultaneously centralized, decentralized, and distributed, depending on your choice of how to engage with it. And that makes it extremely powerful. Now, on the other hand, that's all like the positive aspect of this. On the other hand, I believe that the current interest in hype around and migration to nostr is overblown. I believe that the implementation of the base protocol is lacking, as in it technologically is a very alpha product.
Mm-hmm.
The protocol itself is lacking primarily in the range of spam prevention. We have not seen the bots on nostr yet. They are unaware of it. And when they show up, there is nothing you can do. They could crush the network. I was actually talking with the team, and we were like, if we were a little more nefarious as a group of individuals, I could shut the nostr network down in about 24 hours completely. We could write a series of bots that would identify all the most prominent relays and crush them.
Do it.
Just, no, we're not doing it.
Do it.
But it can be done, which means somebody.
But I think you should do it just to prove that point. Like, if it's actually like if some small group can do something like that, then it's not decentralized enough. It's not censorship resistant enough, right?
Well, the protocol is. My point is that it's this very hacky kind of initial alpha implementation of a very powerful protocol with a lot of potential. And it will get subtly attacked over time. It can be anti-fragile. And so these attacks will only make it stronger. But I also don't think that it is good practice to attack something strictly for the sake of making it stronger.
You don't like the Barack approach.
What did he do again? What was the
he basically crashed LND by doing some giant transaction.
Right. Yeah. And he had told them about it in advance, and they sort of like kicked the can down the road, being like, nobody's going to do this right now. We'll solve it in a later release. And he's like, okay, well, I told you.
Hey, they were busy trying to get paid on Taro, like from a bunch of shitcoiners. Like they had important, fiat money to get after, right?
There's arguments on both sides about this style of hardening systems.
Yeah.
Right. Do you make it known, and then if the team doesn't do anything about it and somebody else attacks it, oh well, or do you like actually commit the attack? I don't lean towards the latter. I don't hate someone that does necessarily, but it's not my style, right? I'm going to identify issues. I'm going to make those issues known. And, I believe that very naturally, these issues will be exploited over time by people who are committing the attacks, and the network will be hardened. I just don't think that the world or me or nostr benefits from like Start9 launching a full frontal attack on the nostr network. I just don't see it as like a positive thing.
Yeah, man. By the way, absolutely, like really, really detailed and deep opinion about nostr. Like I could see that you've definitely dug into this heavily. Man, really appreciate that.
Just two final comments on nostr. The first, like I think it's good that they've kind of gone after an animal that's not extinct, right? An ostrich is still around. A mastodon has been extinct for a long time. I feel like if you want to build something that lasts, maybe don't name it after something that's already extinct. And the second, I've forgotten what it was.
Hey, while you're thinking of that, are mastodons and woolly mammoths the same thing? Are they?
No, mastodon. I think it's like a sea creature. Let me, I can something like that. But yeah, similar sort of thing. It's like dinosaur sort of era, but I think it's a sea creature.
Check it out, because you say that, and what first came to mind is I was just out with some friends from college, and one of whom is fairly active in the investment community. Not in the Bitcoin space, but in many others. And he's currently investing in a company that is actively bringing the woolly mammoth back to life.
Oh no, my apologies. You are absolutely correct. It is a woolly mammoth. Yeah, okay. You're correct.
That's actually pretty great.
So they're bringing it back. So you said it's extinct. Well, it won't be in about 2 years. Heavily funded company, proof of concept in place.
Sounds like a shitcoin.
They found it is. It absolutely is. No, it's dead in the water at best. At best and at worst, right? Like best for them and worst for everyone else in the world.
Yeah.
The research that they are doing will be applied towards human gene editing.
Oh, of course.
And all sorts of nefarious things.
Oh, yeah.
But they are making massive innovations and advancements in the human species ability to manipulate DNA. And their sort of proof of concept is to bring the woolly mammoth back to life.
We are moving on over to REKT.
Up next, we have REKT, sponsored by Represent. Ltd.com is where you can find some of the finest apparel made by Bitcoiner David X. Represent make a whole bunch of different types of things, but you can see here they make some low-key but well-made, casual but stylish looking clothes. You can get 10% off all of their goodies using the code pleb-underground over at their website, which is representltd.com. Check them out. So guys, we have a couple of stories on REKT this week. The first, a little funny one. I always like laughing at fake Toshi. Like this is one of my hobbies. One moment. So someone asked Craig, right? Oh, apparently he has an IQ of 183, and they said, "Do you have a photographic memory?" He says he has an eidetic memory, and he uses memory palace techniques. He says this is different from photographic memory, and the guy says, "Yeah, but you forgot your keys though," and of which course he then gets blocked. Yeah, like, you know, if you're such a genius, like, why do you fuck up all the time? You're an embarrassment. Yeah. Any comments, guys?
Yeah, big time. So look, I was actually in a space this week, and somebody was talking about the fact that he is trying to sue these 16 Bitcoin developers into essentially handing over his supposed Bitcoin, or Bitcoin that he believes is his, even though that's not how Bitcoin works. But my point is that so during this conversation, there was one person that brought up, and I don't disagree with them, right? Like we don't ignore CSW, right? We don't ignore him. We pay attention because he makes a lot of noise, and unfortunately, like the Pied Piper, right? He essentially leads a whole bunch of people into getting wrecked with his nonsense and ridiculousness. So we can't ignore him. But at the same time, I think that people mistake that for him and BSV actually being some type of a threat, right? Like people sit there and they're like, well,
no, BSV is not a threat, but him and Calvin are a threat to the liberties of proper Bitcoiners.
So I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that point, but the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, people sit there and think that he's gonna, you know, they are gonna scare away people from developing on Bitcoin, when in fact the number of developers on Bitcoin has only been rising. So
we have seen a few of them turning NIM though, which I think is a sensible move. Or like one thing I think I've seen proposed, which is very sensible, would be for many developers to actually contribute under the same pseudonym. Because actually it's about the quality of the ideas, and then you're actually merging a bit of the identities as well. It's quite clever.
Yeah, I totally agree. Those are all great ideas. But I think the point is that, you know, he may be able to do a lot of this stuff in the courts, but at the end of the day, Bitcoin doesn't give a shit. Bitcoiners don't care. The miners don't care. The validation nodes don't care. Nobody cares. Like, well, what exactly is one court in the UK going to enforce all around the world that he can actually do? It's a social attack, albeit a very intelligent one, okay? Because he's essentially throwing everything but the kitchen sink to see what sticks. So I have to give him credit on that. But I do think that it's a giant nothing burger, and it's a whole bunch of noise, and I think it's going to be a whole lot of wasted energy. Anyways, that's my long-winded thought on that one. Matt, any thoughts on the fake Toshi stuff? Do you follow it? Hopefully you ignore it. I mean, you're actually building, so I'm pretty sure you ignore it mostly.
That's about right. Yeah. I mean, it's unavoidable to like talk talking on Twitter, but yeah, I don't think about them.
Good. Excellent. I don't blame you. All right, Walton, what do you got? What do you got next on REKT?
So up next on REKT, we have what is going on with the economy. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, in part, it means spending at large retailers like Walmart, and apparently Walmart are now spending, people at Walmart are now spending more on groceries and less on general merchandise. Essentially, people are buying more necessities and less optional choices. Therefore, you can see that people are getting more squeezed financially. We laugh at some people in REKT, but also in REKT we look at some serious things going on. Of course, inflation hitting swathes of the population now. Over the last 20 years, globalism has absorbed some of the inflation when it comes to commodities. And so you haven't seen that, in the Western world. You haven't really seen, your weekly shop going up like crazy until much more recently, and that's because I think we've had peak globalism. You can't outsource anything anymore. You can't. There's no more shrinkflation to do. There's no more reducing the quality of things. Like, these businesses have all absorbed all of their all of the inflation they can, and now businesses have to pass on all the new inflation to customers because they have no other choice. And we're seeing that especially when it comes to things like energy and fuel. And of course, those are some of the biggest costs for most people, most normal people. It's a real shame what's happened.
Yeah, great points. And back in 2010, back when I was a Ron Paul fanatic and buying gold to try to hedge against the eventual collapse of fiat, I was fairly convinced that like a hyperinflationary environment was coming, and most of that thought was because I sort of misunderstood how inflation works and the global nature of dollar reserve currency. And we have seen hyperinflation in some countries around the world between then and now, but I was talking a domestic one. And something I learned that a lot of people don't realize necessarily when talking about inflation is that it is not a sort of uniform trans-asset phenomenon, right? It's not like everything just goes up. Inflation bubbles in particular markets, and it generally seeks those markets that have inelastic demand, right? Where people say, damn the cost, you gotta have that, right? Like, it doesn't matter how much it costs. If you don't do it, like, your life is going to be ruined. And if you think about, an American culture, especially, like, what those two things are, is you really have healthcare and you have higher education, where children are being raised and adults are acting like it doesn't matter what the cost is. And then we try to offset the cost by implementing insurance and federal loans at 2% and stuff like that. But if you look at the costs of education and healthcare over the past 10 years, it has been quite absurd. And because all the inflation has been bubbling there, other things like groceries have not necessarily bubbled because it's all being absorbed by healthcare. But now it's sort of squeezing out, right? It's like escaping these pockets and starting to infect other parts, which is why the Fed began taking measures to tighten the money supply over the last year or two, is because it's starting to bubble over. And when it bubbles over into everyday goods, like gasoline or food, is where people start to where you see the unrest, right? Because these things are partially inelastic. Like, you're always going to eat, but there's some discretion in what you eat, right? You're always going to buy Christmas presents, but there's some discretion in what you buy. So they're a little bit more, we'll call it forgiving.
It's like how the CPI gets fudged, right? Oh, the steak's too expensive, I'll buy the chicken, or that sort of thing.
or we'll just stop counting
Or-
steak
yeah,
in the
exactly.
CPI, right?
Take away everything that went up too high.
Yeah, because it went out the basket. Because now you're buying chicken. That's how it works.
Sorry, Matt. Continue.
Well, so now that it's bubbling over, and there really isn't a good way to like pump the brakes on this, right? Like raising taxes could pump the brakes, raising interest rates could pump the brakes, but neither of those are things people want either, right? So you're just going to go ahead.
I think I saw a U.S. official this week suggest, what about if we do inflation-linked wages, and then that way, like, we're good, right? Isn't that how it works? Like, how fucking terrible at math are you guys? Sort your shit out.
That's not math, that's politics.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was talking about how inflation was now sort of bubbling over, and that there may be some equally awful measures that, you know, regulators and central banks can take to offset the inflation, but those things are also aggravating to, you know, society, like raising taxes or raising interest rates, right? And so I am at this point like thinking outside of the financial and even technological and especially Bitcoin realm of the implications of this, right? I'm genuinely concerned about large scale social unrest right now. When people cannot afford groceries and, you know, when they are not just living paycheck to paycheck, but really going into debt just to survive, that you have yourself a, you know, unsustainable situation that always results in upheaval and violence. So I think that we could be entering a short to medium term phase, thinking over the next, you know, 5 years, where things could get a little dangerous. And so I just say that because I don't know if people take it to the physical realm very often. You know, we talk about inflation, we talk about this, but like ultimately this results in guns and violence. And so
Yeah, and just wait till they start raising rates more.
Yeah. So
It's inevitable.
Correct. It's always been inevitable that there was going to be real kind of, you know, danger in the world as a result of these asinine policies that have been going on for the last 100 years and getting worse recently. But like, you know, it bubbles up in acute instances, right? Like there are periods of peace and calm, and then there are periods of unrest. And I think that, like, based on
We're about to enter a period of unrest. That definitely is about to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are.
Yep.
Yeah, so the third and final story for this week's REKT, little thread from James Lavish, a former guest on the first mystery matchup of PlebUnderground with our friend Magoo, talking about some credit default swaps. So for those of you that don't know, credit default swaps were heavily featured in The Big Short. If you believe that someone, if you believe that a company is going to do poorly, you can essentially bet on the default of that company, the ability of that company to pay debt that it currently has. So you're essentially betting against them being able to repay debt that they have. You can have that for companies. You can also have it for countries. Now, so credit default swaps here, essentially they are bets that can be traded that a group will be unable to pay its debt obligations. So, the thread from James Lavish here. US CDS, US credit default swap spreads have rocketed higher recently, suggesting an accelerating probability of default. But why is this happening? And what exactly is the CDS market telling us? Time for a thread. So, I explained a little bit about what a CDS is. And he talks about the Big Short, blah, blah, blah. But actually, what's happening... What's happening now and who's buying these? So investors that own these are typically larger institutions, endowments, pension funds, big hedge funds. So we're talking those that own, you know, billions or you know, larger funds. A lot of money in these sorts of things. So just getting on to the crunch here of James's thread, which is what are the spreads telling us? So we're talking about these spreads jumping, the difference between what's being paid, and you can see the US CDS jumped from about 15 to about 66. That sounds quite large, and it says this 1-year CDS is almost twice as expensive as the 5-year CDS. So what that means is that
Oh wow. Well, this is a crisis of confidence. Like that's what that's telling you, is that people aren't willing, nobody trusts it for 5 years.
right,
That's what it's telling you.
right.
This is not good.
So essentially, what is happening? There is a decreased confidence in the United States' ability to pay its debt. Why? Well, because I don't know if you saw a chart recently. Basically, there was a good one. I don't have it here, but I can put it in the notes. Where you look at how much interest is being paid on debt annually, or rather is accruing on debt annually, on sovereign debt. And the US, about 10 years ago, it was 400 billion per year. Now it's 900 to a trillion, 900 billion to a trillion, and it's gone from kind of, you know, being relatively linear to kind of really hooking upwards. So no wonder the rates at which you know, well, not quite yet, but this is going to happen, right? This is basically like the credit default swap markets are going to be ahead of like what's actually being lent, right? So if the people think the US aren't going to pay their debt, then they're going to start acquiring CDS against this, and then you're going to have people theoretically not, you know, lending the US money at a particular rate, which means that they have to borrow at higher rates, which is going to increase this process more. This is all the debt spiral. So, guys, if you're interested in how all of this works, please go watch the mystery matchup special with James Lavish and Magoo. Understand this debt spiral is something that is going to happen, is happening, is going to accelerate, and is going to happen across all major economies, to all major governments. This is going to be, I think, the triggering of the general unrest that Matt talks about here, right? That eventually you go, why am I paying taxes to a group where, you know, like half of the money's going on the interest that they're like, if they're just borrowing so much, why can't they just borrow all? Like I think you said, you know, people don't stop paying taxes. I don't know, like in 20, 30 years when they're trying to take 90% of your money, like I don't know, at some point people have to say no. I don't know how that happens, but I think that's going to be part of the general unrest.
When you're talking about CDOs, that is very scary stuff. I mean, this was really, you know, the major piece in the 2007, 2008 mortgage crisis. And I mean, essentially what happened was, while we're looking at this, we are seeing the future. Essentially, like, this is what's happening, right? Like, these traders, like, all of the future value that would exist is essentially being sucked in today and taken for a fraction. And the problem is that we don't benefit in any way, shape, or form. I'm saying, like, there are very small pockets of individuals and businesses that benefit from doing this, and the rest of us just hold the frickin' bag. And I mean, look, you know, like the CDOs at the end of the day.
Yeah, CDS. But yeah, you have to be an institution. Sorry. Exactly. It's like those two guys who had their garage operation. They walk into a bank. They're like, "Hey, can we buy some CDS? We've got like $30 million." That's like, you know, we're like quite proud of that. Like, okay, and they're like, "Oh yeah, the minimum is 500 million. You're only off by about." Oh no, he didn't say that. He says, "Oh yeah, come back when you've got another 470 or whatever it is." You know, it's some much bigger number, but that's how it works, right, Phil? Is unless you're one of the big boys, you don't actually get to hedge your bets. You just get pumped and dumped. Bang bang.
It's smoke and mirrors. It really is smoke and mirrors, and unfortunately, as a society, we've definitely how could I say this? Not only have we enabled this behavior, but we've validated it, and we desire it, right? Like at some point, banking and these institutions went away from hiring traditional bankers and just went and hired mathematicians. They're like, just come up with a formula that makes money.
There's some great examples of this. Like Renaissance Technologies is a big hedge fund that is like all mathematicians essentially. Like Bridgewater, Dalio's firm, they're hiring a bunch. Like it's mathematicians and programmers. I think it's scary how much of the world is essentially run by. I mean, they're not living, right? But there's a whole bunch of really complicated algorithms that are all involved in lots of markets, and that drive all sorts of behaviors all over the world. Like we don't have a kind of true AI in that there's no it's not like one thing, but there's, in the same way that you have lots of interconnected systems in your body, and your human body's able to kind of deal with lots of things, but if you set up a whole bunch of systems on top, like how well does the human body still do its job? The same is true of the economy. Like if you have some sort of ecosystem, right, which is what like a good economy is, you have interconnected parts that thrive off each other. If you then have parasitic systems designed on top, over time, the health of that ecosystem, the health of that economy is going to deteriorate. So, to you high frequency trading firms, like, go fuck yourselves, because you're leeches, quite frankly. I used to have a lot of respect. I used to think, like I fucking love math. I used to think Ray Dalio had principles, like his book, which is a good read actually, but he doesn't have principles. But anyway, like the point is, these people are rent seekers. There's a lot of leeches in the world, and yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame, because the fiat world enables them to do the dealings with the politicians that enable this sort of stuff, that enables, the kind of elites to stay in power. Because ultimately, when it comes to governments, they don't work for citizens. Governments protect asset holders, and large financial institutions, and such as these funds and institutions, are the ones that get protected, not you and your life savings.
Very interesting. All right, we are moving on over to the
Hopium.
The Hopium is brought to you by CryptoCloaks. Check them out, cryptocloaks.com, and their new address in the EU, cryptocloaks.co.uk. Use the PlebUnderground code for 5% off on awesome 3D prints like the Bitcoin grenade, where you could store your open dime. You can also get the bigger one and actually fit a full signing device. Maybe you're interested in the 3D printed Bitcoin astronaut, or helping out Space Cat by donating to defendingbtc.com and possibly getting the Space Cat helmet ornament. Anyways, check them out. Awesome quality 3D printed goods. Buy a Bitcoiner. Check them out. CryptoCloaks.com. All right, guys. For the Hopium, we've got some bullish articles. Here we go. Let's dive right into it. I actually was using this this article during a clip this week. Very interesting, right? It's always important for us to zoom out. We always talk about the signal. We always talk about dropping the noise. I think this is a great example. This is an article that came out in 2021, but was updated. Okay, was updated a little bit, was updated a year later. So here we go. Bitcoin died 45 times in 2021. 438 Bitcoin obituaries have been counted since 2010. One of the latest obituaries produced by Robert Macaulay, an associate member of the Faculty of History at the University of Oxford. In a December 22 guest post for the Financial Times, Macaulay argued that Bitcoin is worse than a Madoff-style Ponzi scheme. I love it when they do that. I love the Ponzi scheme line. Okay, so let's zoom out here, okay? Let's zoom out. All right, so we've got this article that came out today, and this is about Cash App. Bitcoin gross profit was 35 million in the fourth quarter of 2022 for Cash App. The total sale amount of Bitcoin sold to customers, which we recognize as Bitcoin revenue, was 1.83 million. Sorry, 1.83 billion. That makes a big difference. So for the full year, okay, for the full year 2022, Cash App generated $7.11 billion of Bitcoin revenue and 156 million of Bitcoin gross profit. And that's down 29 and 28% year over year, respectively. Okay, I want you guys to think about that. That's down. So we're in a bear market, and $700 billion worth of Bitcoin purchased through Cash App. And before we go into the comments on this, I'm gonna just pull up the next article, just a little bit more bullishness, right? This is a great move, I think, from Blue Wallet. Blue Wallet shutting down custodial Lightning Wallet on April 30th. They're telling people to remove funds as soon as possible. That's right. Blue Wallet, Blue Wallet actually is enforcing self-sovereignty, and you know what? Good move for Blue Wallet. I definitely applaud them. So look, $700+ billion worth of Bitcoin purchased through.
No, Phil, it was 7 billion, but they had, I think it was 700 million in profit or something like that.
136 million in profit, but
okay, whatever. The point is the numbers were only down like 30%, and Bitcoin's down way more than that. So actually, what that means is people are buying more. No, like that's how I see that.
Exactly, that's also how I see that. And not only that, but think about all the FUD. Think of FTX. Think of all the blow-ups. In the last 2 years, we've had all of these, the rug pulls, all of this garbage, and yet look at what is happening. I think people are starting to pay attention, and they're realizing. The other piece to this, which I hate to be the kind of bearer of bad news, but at the same time, if you care about KYC Bitcoin, right? If it makes a difference to you, that is a shitload of Bitcoin that was purchased through a KYC gatekeeper. So that does kind of suck. That does kind of suck, which is why it was cool that we had Steph last week from Peach that's offering KYC.
I have mixed opinions on this. To me, if everyone acquires Bitcoin, whether KYC or not, it's only KYC to them.
Yep.
Like if it gets spent, it can then not be attached to anyone, right? Like, okay, yes, people can know that you bought some Bitcoin at some point. That bit doesn't get deleted, but you can gain forward-looking privacy. And if enough people adopt Bitcoin, I don't know. To me, the waters get so muddied that actually it doesn't really matter. And but that's my understanding of kind of the I don't know, the math of complex systems when you've got lots of interacting parts versus few.
Oh yeah. No man, I absolutely.
It's just discrete math at the end of the day. Like,
I totally agree, and the reality is that when enough of us, when the more Bitcoiners there are, the more of an ecosystem there is for Bitcoin. And then all of a sudden it's like, you don't need these gatekeepers anymore. And this is what they don't understand, that gated system, right? That garden, that walled garden that they've created, that's a walled garden that Bitcoin can literally just move out from under there, which is exactly what we're seeing with the parallel economy that's growing in Bitcoin. Matt, what are your thoughts on all of this, on either one of the stories, either the Cash App story or Blue Wallet?
Well, the Blue Wallet one, I, on behalf of Start9, commented on Twitter.
Oh,
basically saying good move to them, and then reminding people that they can run their own self-hosted instance of LND Hub and continue to use Blue Wallet as their Lightning Hub, right? So, or as their Lightning Wallet. Blue Wallet has not abandoned Lightning, they've just abandoned custodial Lightning. They're shutting down their node on which other people were storing funds. So
Matt, can we get into a little bit like the difference like between these different implementations? Because I think I think LND got very, very popular because of a whole bunch of package services like Umbrel. But I think more recently there's been more popularity, I think, towards C Lightning, because I think Blockstream have been getting on with it, unlike Lightning Labs maybe. And but how does Start9 do things? How is the embassy implementation? Because yours is a pruned node, is that right? Can you talk to us a little bit about Start9's architecture and how you guys do things over there?
Sure. Yeah. Well, LND and CLN are both supported by our platform, and in fact, you can run both side by side. So I run both an LND node and a CLN node on my embassy. And then you can visualize those nodes using a variety of wallet software, such as Ride the Lightning or Thunder Hub, or even some of the lighter, not necessarily node management software, but definitely wallet software like Blue Wallet or Zeus. We really like.
Yeah, I love Zeus.
Shout out.
Start9 and embassyOne are completely agnostic towards various protocols, implementations of those protocols, and servers. We believe in user choice, and so people should be able to run whatever they want on their own computer, and it's our job to facilitate that process. We also go above and beyond to not just allow users to install something and get it running, which is what most, or not most, but all of the other sort of plug and play server / node projects do, right? Their job is to get you up and running as quickly as possible. What embassyOne does that is totally unique, not only amongst these other projects, but in history, is that we give people the tools to manage and administer a personal server on an ongoing basis, right? So as opposed to having some super technical friend come over to your house and install a bunch of shit on your server and then be like, cool, see ya, and then walk out, and then you're kind of like on your own. Yes, everything's running, but you have no idea how to administer it yourself.
So is this a lot easier than having like a NAS, like getting a Synology and buying a a hard drive and setting up stuff like that? This is. Do you think this is kind of Apple kind of friendly UX for people to set up their own servers?
It's getting there. Yeah, I mean, Synology is a fantastic project. They predate us by 20 years, and in certain ways we are already more featureful than them, and in other ways we are not. But that gap, in the ways that we're not, should be closed by the end of this year, leaving us just strictly a superior product. However, Synology also is just not designed for sovereignty, right? Synology is designed for self-hosting, but it does not take privacy and anonymity into account. It's primarily designed to save you costs on cloud services and SaaS subscription fees, which it does and does very well. But what we are doing,
like having redundancy, not having the dependency on your storing it somewhere else, right? It's like I've got a Synology with all of my DVD collection on, for example. Correct. Like, okay, yes, you can use Netflix, but actually, it's useful to have some home storage.
Of course, right. And on our devices, you can store things as well. We do not currently offer a video streaming service such as like Plex Media Server, but we will within the next few months. And like I said, we're moving at a pace that very few people realize. Building a product that is not yet fully understood in its reach. The ability to run and administer, to set up and administer a personal private server running any variety of self-hosted open source software and accessing that software from anywhere in the world privately and anonymously without the involvement of a single trusted third party is a breakthrough in computing technology that parallels only the two prior revolutions of personal computing and cloud computing. And we really believe that this is the future of computing on Earth, that it will be done in this manner, which we call sovereign computing. And Start9 is absolutely at the forefront of this. There are many players involved, and we believe that that diverse ecosystem of competition is very, very fruitful, very positive for everyone. But most people don't realize how sort of far ahead we are on a viable, scalable, useful system. And how much is about to happen over the next 8 months. What's coming over the next 8 months is hopefully going to blow people's minds. We're very excited.
So Matt, you've talked a little bit about the tools, but how about the hardware? Like what should Start9 run on? I know you guys have got a couple of actual hard nodes that you do deliver, but if you're running, like you said, you can run 2 Lightning nodes, right? Because you can run an LND and a C Lightning on the same node. That plus a bunch of apps. Like, is this sounds like quite heavy work for a small device?
Yeah, we no longer recommend the Raspberry Pi 4 gigabyte variety. The 8 gigabyte variety is pretty dang good. It's a nice little computer. It has its limitations, obviously, but hardware should be selected based on software, and software is selected based on use case. So, for example, if all you want to do is run a self-hosted password manager, or maybe a chat service, so that you and your friends and family can engage in very featureful group chat, and maybe even run like a small file server so that you can store all your private documents and everything like that. A Raspberry Pi is plenty adequate for that use case. You don't need some supercharged mini PC or old laptop with 16 gigs of RAM. You can get away with an 8 gigabyte Pi just fine. It works wonderfully. If you want to run the heavy stuff, like if you plan to run a full archival Bitcoin node, both implementations of Lightning, an Electrum server, and Nextcloud and a chat server, and you really want to crank it up, then yeah, you need something beefier than a Raspberry Pi. You shouldn't buy a Raspberry Pi, and that's why we offer the Embassy Pro. It is a pseudo supercomputer. It's freaking badass, and it can handle everything that we have on the store and then some. As in, it has room to grow. It's essentially future-proofed against the next probably 3 to 5 years. You would not need more more robust or powerful hardware. But what's really cool about our system, right, is that ultimately we're just operating system developers, right? The fact that we sell devices is just the manifestation, the physical manifestation of our primary product and value add to the world, which is an operating system. Like, you don't need to do business with us to get up and running with our technology. And there's no caveat to that. Like, you can go fish out an old laptop or an old mini PC or an old desktop computer or your own Raspberry Pi, and in the few clicks of a button, be up and running with embassyOS, with no catch. Everything works full as it would for somebody who bought it from us. And we have more and more of this happening these days. Like, more and more people are DIYing, especially international customers, because of international shipping, customs, and duties costs. It just isn't feasible for them to buy from us. And so we say, well, don't. Just fire it up on your old laptop and throw us a donation if you want.
I've had the embassyOne from when you first released it. I am one of those do-it-yourself people because I've had so many Raspberry Pis, and I can honestly say, and this is something that I said to you even when we first spoke all those years ago, you guys did a fantastic job with the user experience. The setup app, I mean, that is just absolutely... It's something that's not foreign to anyone. People just like the way that feels. You install the setup app, you power up the unit, your Raspberry Pi, I should say, and you wait like 30 seconds or a minute, and boom, all of a sudden you follow the prompts, you can connect up to it. It's really easy to use. Now, I got to ask you this though. The two products, so there's the embassyOne and the Embassy Pro. So I'm assuming the embassyOne is for a home user, and I'm assuming the Embassy Pro is more of a like a commercial offering. That's my take, but can you please expand on the I guess like what the target markets are for each of them?
Yeah, for sure. It's not quite the right dividing line, though it is accurate, but that's not the primary, way that somebody would go about selecting one of these two products. It's really about what you intend to do on it, not why you intend to do that. It could be for personal use case or commercial use case, but it's really just about how much power do you need, right? Almost in the sense that if you go to buy a MacBook, right, you're going to buy a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro, and they all do the same thing. They just do it faster, right? Like that's ultimately all this is the Pro can just handle more stuff. So like I said, if you just want to pile up all the services and you want to run 40 things in parallel and they're all, hungry for CPU and they're all hungry for RAM, then you need a more powerful device. Otherwise, you're just going to have a bad time. You're going to get a lot of spinners, things are going to get slow, it could even crash. And so it's all about use case, right? If you just, like I said, want to run a password manager in a small chat application, and maybe I'm even overplaying how weak the embassyOne is quite powerful, right? Like the embassyOne will sufficiently power your and your family's needs on almost every vertical of computing. You just can't really abuse it, right? Like the Embassy Pro is for two types of people, or three, I should say. One is for the ones who just need the rocket ship. Whether you're going to use every drop of it or not, you just want the coolest, baddest thing. Number two is if you are really need those resources, right? Like you are going to run Bitcoin and ElectRS and multiple Lightning nodes. And again, we're coming out with more and more stuff. So you just want it to kind of be, future-proofed. And lastly is if you intend to use your server to serve large amounts of people, right? So even if you're only running one thing, let's say all I want to do is run a chat server, a matrix chat server. And I don't just want to use it for myself and my family and my friends, but I got some 300,000 Twitter followers and I'm just like, hey, everyone, here's my chat server. You can use it. It's like, even though I'm only running one service, if 100,000 people are attempting to use that service, the machine is going to get crushed. I actually don't think an Embassy Pro could handle 300,000 people.
I was about to stop you. I was thinking that sounds like quite a lot, to be honest.
It's an exaggeration. It's just.
But I've got an analogy. Maybe the one is for if you want to run your own Lightning node, get a one. If you want to run a routing node, get a Pro. Is that a good delineation?
Yes, and not because of power though, right? Like the embassyOne is going to run a Lightning routing node just fine. It's actually for reliability reasons, right? So
to do with juggling HTLCs.
Yeah, like if you're using a private server to do things that I would consider mission critical to your life, you're going to want a computer that is very well built and has lots of power, even if it's more power than you need, because computers, when they start running low on resources, they start behaving very oddly, right? Like things just freeze up and crash. And if this is mission critical to your life and your business, then you need to buy a very quality, high powered device. And we're actually not even talking about this like massive life altering decision. We're talking about the difference between $600 and $1,600, which I don't want to trivialize. It could be a meaningful amount of money for some people. But if your life and business depend on the thing, then it's nothing. $1,000 is a trivial added cost to secure your business, right? Like it's just
like an insurance policy.
Yeah. You're just building it out so that, you don't have to worry about it. The Pro is not going to let you down. It's not going to crash. It's not going to run out of resources.
Matt, quick question for you. Is it called Start9 because it's your own personal cloud and Cloud9 is the perfect cloud or something like that? If you're on Cloud9, then you feel perfect. I think it's something to do with that, I'm guessing. But am I right?
Absolutely not. No.
Damn it.
Not even close. Our origin story, like the name, is posted on our website under the About section. It's also on our GitHub. But the reason I say that is because I probably don't want to do the whole thing right now. But I do encourage you to go read it. It's really cool. It's just a little thing I wrote up. But TLDR, is that it was an internet meme from, a few years ago, and a phenomenon called Twitch Plays Pokemon. So the video streaming service Twitch, a guy hooked up his Game Boy to the Twitch video streaming service, whereby anyone who was in the room and participating in the comments could control the game. So I could like type into the comment section right 2 or forward 3, and it would cause the player on the Game Boy to actually move according to the commands. And so you had, I am going to do the story. Fuck it, I'm doing it. So the player could move according to the commands. And what happened was, if you got like 1,000 people or even 100 people in the comments all telling the player what to do, then the player would just be basically turning in circles because everyone's sort of battling each other for what they want it to do. So no progress could be made. It was a cool thing and it was fun, but ultimately, if it got too popular, no progress could be made. So what the game developer did was he introduced an alternative game mode called democracy mode. And if more than 50% of the participants wanted to use democracy mode because they couldn't move forward otherwise, then the game would switch over to democracy mode. And in democracy mode, rather than any command you enter being executed, your commands are treated as votes. And at the end of every epoch, which was, I think, 4 seconds, then whatever command had the most votes is the one that got executed on the screen. And so the gameplay became a lot more smoother because it basically said, what is the will of the people? And then the player would execute that. Well, it's not majority of votes. It's not like a move needs more than 50%. It's whichever move got the most votes. So if a single move got 3 votes and nothing else got 3 votes, even though there's 100 people voting, the thing that got 3 votes would be what was executed. What this meant is that in order to take over the game, all you had to do was get a few of your friends together and hit up this thing and all coordinate to vote the same thing. So I'd be like, all right, everyone vote right 3. And then 5 of us would vote right 3 and right 3 would get executed. And the other 95 people who were in the channel who weren't coordinating basically were just kicked out of the game. They became useless, in the comment section. They had no power. And so what happened was, the way to fight back against this for those 95 people is, if at any point one of those people was like, you know what, I'm fed up. It's clear that some, group, gang has hijacked the game and it's no longer fun. I want out. I want to go back to anarchy mode. I want to get out of democracy mode and go back to the full-blown every vote, every command gets executed game mode. They would type into the menu Start9. And what Start9 meant in the gameplay was open the start menu 9 times in a row. It was basically the most disruptive possible thing that you could do to just destroy gameplay, to basically make the game unplayable. However, it would only work if enough people voted Start9 to overcome the gang that had hijacked the game to begin with. Mm-hmm. So I would type Start9 into the comment section. And if other people felt the way that I felt, then they would start typing Start9, and then everyone would start typing Start9. And then at some point, there would be enough Start9 votes to overcome the other gang. And then the game would just be ruined because the start menu would just keep opening and closing 9 times in a row every 4 seconds, and nobody wants to play. And then as a result, even the gang would be like, fine, well, let's vote it back to anarchy mode. And then it goes back to anarchy mode and everybody's happy, until, again, no progress could be made, and then they vote it back to democracy. So anyway, it's about the pendulum swing between overbearing, democratic, regulatory gangs running the world and full-blown anarchy, and that it is a natural swing between the two in order for society or the game to move forward.
I think you should go with my story. I think it's much shorter, much more.
It doesn't matter if it's shorter.
I'm sorry it's long.
No, I'm just fucking with you. But like, dude, I like it. It's about collaboration of the masses to take sovereignty. There's some honor in the name, even if it took a little time for me to see where it was going. Very very honorable, sir. So Matt, what's the best place to find you, to contact you, to talk to people from Start9, and to get their hands on an embassy or the other products and services that you can offer?
Sure. The main starting place is definitely just start9.com. But we have a very active, very helpful community, including members of the Start9 team who are pretty much omnipresent in our channels. So Telegram, we're at Start9_labs. Twitter is Start9 Labs, at Start9 Labs. And we have community.start9.com, which is our forum. Basically, we have a lot of places that you can go to start your journey. And what's really cool about Start9 and the people, the team, is that we aren't just sort of like building a product, throwing it at you and saying good luck. We are very present. We are very helpful. We know that this can be intimidating for some people. We know that although we have built a great product, that it is still not as good as it needs to be to sort of be grandma ready. And so we are very prepared to hold your hand, answer your questions, and make you gain the confidence that you need to do this yourself. You don't depend on us, but if you need us, we're there. So if this is interesting to anyone listening, stop by. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised at the community and also how good the product is. It really does work. That's the number one thing that people comment on after buying the product, is surprise that it actually works and how well it works. Because they just, in the space of early stage technology and product companies, have come to expect a degree of shoddiness and dysfunction, as well as borderline disrespect, but at least absence from the team that built it, of just being like, well, it's early stage, deal with it. All right, we don't do that. We're very different. Come check it out.
Absolutely awesome. And we are going to put all of those details in the show notes. All right, guys, every month we do a BtcPayServer update. This month is no different. Let's dive into it right now. So they've had quite a few releases. They've had quite a few releases in the last 2 or 3 weeks, BtcPayServer, but no major release since our last update. A new feature that we've got is adding the ability to migrate from MySQL SQLite to the Postgres backend. I used to work with databases, and I know that is an absolute pain. So thank you very much for fixing this. It's not easy to move between database platforms.
Yeah, let me jump in here too, because
cool.
we help them with this, because
awesome.
on the embassy currently, BtcPayServer uses a SQLite.
What are the chances?
I know. What are the chances?
It uses a SQLite backend, which doesn't really scale well, and also is officially deprecated by the BtcPayServer team. And so we hit them up and we were like, all right, we want to provide an update for our users to migrate them to Postgres, but like we prefer not to write it by hand, and we think all your other customers would benefit from this as well. So Nicholas himself jumped in and worked with Lucy from Start9 to scope this out. And then Lucy he wrote the code, but Lucy was the sort of primary guinea pig and tester. And so in the next release of BtcPayServer on embassyOne, it will automatically migrate you to Postgres if you just click update.
Oh, that's fantastic. Absolutely. And Matt, thank you so much for providing that detailed update for BtcPayServer. Very cool stuff. And guys, we are going to put a link to the BtcPayServer release notes in the show notes as always. And of course, guys, this is the end of our show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check us out on our audio-only platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. If you want to stream us sats, check us out on fountain.fm. You could stream us sats through Breeze. Walton, how do we end this?
Matt's the hill that was the guest on the show.
Matt's the hill.
Oh, also, fuck shitcoins.
All right, good. I was beginning to feel like you were going to leave me hanging there. Catch you all next time.